They don't carry it yet, do they? Those teeny weeny BBs?
The larvae don't usually know.
Yeah, they have to be able to, and looks like everybody's here.
Everybody is here and it's 5 o'clock. That's right. So at this point, I will begin this evening's Conservation Commission meeting. So welcome to the Nantucket Conservation Commission meeting for Thursday, August 25th. This meeting is being held entirely remotely with all participants participating via Zoom. I ask that anybody wishing to comment, if you're on the call, please raise your hand either in your camera window or virtually and wait to be recognized by the chair. Please make sure your phone or device is muted when you're not speaking so that you are not picked up by the meeting recording. And also anybody with public comment, please make sure you state your full name and any relationship you might have to a project before you speak. So with that, we will take public comment on items not being heard this evening. RJ?
Thank you, Chair Erisman. RJ Turcotte on behalf of the Nantucket Land Council. I just would like to follow up that one meeting we had in person, the commission had in person. I had brought in a letter that was relating to New England development in the parking lots downtown and whether those were being maintained properly as far as the adsorbent pads and the stormwater infrastructure. And then at the August 9th, Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee came to everyone's attention as the Great Harbor Yacht Club and the Nantucket Yacht Club were giving presentations on their coastal resilience plans that they are having trouble finding anyone to maintain their stormwater infrastructure as well. So requesting the commission put this on as an agenda item on one of the next meetings because the stormwater infrastructure only works as well as it's being maintained. And it seems like low-hanging fruit to help improve water quality to make sure that this is getting done. And if they can't find a contractor to figure out a way to get someone out here from the vineyard or someone like that who can actually get this work done and keep untreated runoff from getting into the harbor. So thank you.
Thank you, RJ, for bringing this back up. Jeff, do you have any information in regards to first, like the downtown Stop and Shop parking lot area and what's been happening there?
Yes, we have a schedule on site with them in the next week to go out and take a look at them together and to review those requirements in person. And then we'll have a full report on that for those. As for the other stormwater areas, I don't think it hurts to put it on the agenda. We have heard similar things, not just from the yacht clubs, but from a lot of private subdivisions that have stormwater maintenance issues and stormwater infrastructure maintenance issues where they haven't been getting cleaned out over time as required by their original permits. So I think it's definitely a worthwhile conversation to have a little bit more of a stormwater, and that's in jurisdiction and out of jurisdiction. We're hearing those comments fairly consistently.
Thank you, Jeff. I think it would be great to have that on as an agenda item. Do any commissioners have questions regarding this? All right, looks like no. So I'm just going to check YouTube really quickly and see if we have public comment there. Does not appear that we have any more public comment. So the following items are continued this evening. Under notices of intent, we have the Brant Point Club LLC at 6 and 8 North Beach Street and 4 Dolphin Court, continued until September 8th. We also have under amended orders of conditions, Phillips Trustee at 19 East Tristram Ave, also continued until September 8th. So with that, we will open tonight's meeting under notices of intent. We have Town of Nantucket at 98, 100, and 104 Washington Street. And this is represented by Thais Fournier.
Chair, my name is Thais, Water Resource Specialist for the Natural Resources Department. This project is a small subset of a larger project. So as RJ was talking about, managing our stormwater. Thank you for bringing that up. The area that we're proposing is right behind Sales Seafood. It was an area that was a bioretention area back in 2003 and 4. But again, the issue of maintenance, it has been since overgrown, and a lot of work needs to be done in the area. So we're going to file a separate application for the larger plan of this, but the only item that I wanted to address tonight was just the small work on taking care of the invasive species that are there right now. So we have Phragmites and Japanese knotweed. And so we are proposing just to clean up that area with some chemical treatment and obviously trimming it back and cutting it down. So we have a start, and then in a separate application at a later time, we're going to submit like the full project, but this is only just to address the invasives. And we might have to cut back a little bit of some of the native vegetation that are there just to address the area. So that is what I'm bringing forth tonight. And so thank you for bringing that up, Jeff.
Thank you, Thais. Do any commissioners have questions or comments? Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question that's somewhat tangentially related to the project, but I think it hits on our recreation interest. I know this is a place where lots of people store small boats and kayaks and things like that. Is there going to be a way for people to be notified of the work happening? I know you're supposed to move them in the off season, but not everyone does. Is there a way that notification of the work could happen to the public?
Yeah, thank you, Seth. I'm sure that we can notify. Obviously, they're more than happy to put up even a sign in the area that just says that there's ongoing treatment for this. But that's something to consider, and definitely that will keep on our radar for notifying the public in that vicinity as well.
Jeff?
It is something that if we wanted to condition, and something that I had thought about for this, we could just require that, kind of on the corners and somewhere in the middle. I think if we put some physical notice kind of 1 week in advance that there is going to be work taking place prior to, and then changing that notice, and then also utilizing the town website is something we have the ability to do. I think that could also go forward, and then we can obviously release that to the current and the Inky for that work that's going to be happening. But I think given that area and usage, some sort of public notice will be important.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Looks like no. Oh, Ian?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So Thais, it does seem like a little vague, like instructions on the bottle, and it's going to be, some accounting for how much is actually used.
It's true. We were just, it's just simple, because depending on what treatment that you use, each chemical has a different treatment for it, so that it was meant to be vague. But just like we've treated Phragmites on the rest of the island, we would either use something similar and then just follow protocol that you typically would for management of these invasive species. So nothing in excess, just following the straight protocols that you would for treating invasives. So.
Right. So I think, Jeff, would it be appropriate to ask them to monitor how much is used, so at the end we know how much has been used?
We require that for all applications we have for invasive species treatment, for quantities and type of any chemical used. So that would be right in keeping with our normal practice.
Thank you.
So I have to say I'm excited for this project to begin for the town, and I hope as it progresses, I know Nantucket is really tough on signage depending on where you are and who you talk to, but it would be great to have signage that just explains, like, this is a treatment wetland, like here's stage 1 for the public, because you see that in places off island, and I think Nantucket needs more of that education piece.
Absolutely. I wrote note of that, so we'll definitely incorporate that.
Thank you. So let me open this up for public comment. It does not appear that we have public comment on YouTube. Jeff, do we have everything we would need to close?
Sadly, no. The DEP kind of dropped the ball. We're missing a lot of file numbers for tonight.
Yeah.
So this is one. I would ask, just for very particular reasons. Thais will probably not be able to join us at our next hearing for a very, very good reason. That if this is something we're looking for, to put a positive order together for the next meeting, and hopefully just hold it open for the file number.
I think that would be appropriate here.
Thais is going to have her hands full during the next meeting. So
Move, baby.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that would be the appropriate way to go. So we'll just wait for the file number and consider this one pretty much done. All right, so this will continue then for 2 weeks until September 8th.
perfect.
Good luck, Thais.
Thank you. Who knows? Maybe I'll still be able to make this meeting. Thank you.
Welcome. All right, so
Thanks, Thais.
that moves us on to 13 Commercial Street LLC at 13 Commercial Wharf, represented by Paul Santos.
Thank you. Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors on behalf of the applicant and property owner 13 Commercial Street LLC. This was an application that was before you at the last meeting. It's a notice of intent that was originally filed for the proposed raising of an existing dwelling, construction of an addition, and the relocation of a driveway with associated grading, landscaping, and utility installation within land subject to coastal storm flowage in the buffer zone to a coastal beach. We presented this to the commission, heard the commission's concerns, and are back before you tonight with an application to remove the component of the proposed addition. So the application before you is to raise the existing dwelling to come into compliance with the building code and the FEMA regulations. And in doing so, we would be constructing a new stairway entrance at the northerly facade of the building and expanding the existing stairway entrance at the westerly face of the building. The stairway at the westerly face would occur within an area that already contains structure. The area along the northerly face or the commercial street side would be a new stairway, which would simply be platform, stairway, and then an entrance platform into the building. We had proposed previously to enclose a somewhat already enclosed entry area into the existing dwelling. That occurs along the westerly side of the building. There was also a component which was some expansion of the second floor footprint that occurred all within the existing structure. So the application before you tonight, as modified, is simply to elevate the structure and provide code compliant access in 2 locations, which presently exists to gain access to the elevated structure. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have. And a property owner is also, I believe, maybe on the call here too, but I'd like to take it to the board and see where we're at with this after these plan revisions.
Thank you, Paul. I know I appreciate the revisions greatly. Do any commissioners have questions or comments? Linda?
Through you, Madam Chair. Paul, you're still planning on, part of the project is still the expansion of the second floor living space over the existing structure?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, that's it.
Joe, I saw your hand up as well.
Yes, I had a chance to walk by the building a few days after our last meeting. And I was surprised about a couple of things. One is the amount of traffic on Commercial Street. I had no idea there was that much traffic going through there in the 10 minutes I was out in front of the building. The other point is there's not a lot of space there between that building and Commercial Street. And the other point I'd raise is I thought HDC approved whatever HDC approved when we had the last meeting. Does that mean HDC has to reapprove this, or what happens? But
Yeah, so it would have to go back before HDC if it's a different design that's approved here. Seth, did I see your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Paul. I watched the video recording of the last meeting, and I think that what has been presented here is an improvement over the previous plan. However, I'm still concerned about the northerly stair set. I understand that you need to raise the building to meet the flood compliant level, and that requires a different type of access than from before. But you're still asking for an additional new structure in the 50-foot setback. And I hope that there's a way to incorporate the access into the accesses that already exist on site. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. Ian?
I agree completely with Seth.
Thank you, Ian. Mark?
You both took the words out of my mouth.
Any other commissioners' questions or comments? If not, I'll open it up to the public. Anne, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you. This is Anne DeRusso, the owner of the house. So we came back after receiving your comments from last time, and to answer the questions, yes, we would have to go back to HDC because it would be a new plan. We followed your guidance and request to make this as minimal as possible. HDC had really wanted to have a front door. So they didn't want us to keep a side door. They wanted a front door. In fact, we were sent back from HDC to do that. So it's been quite a long process. Although this is going to be an attachment to the building, it's really up in the air, not on the ground. It's really only the last step or couple of steps that will be on the ground. So it'll be attached to the building, and we made it, as you requested, the minimum possible.
Ashley, if I could
Yes,
maybe respond to Ian, Seth, and Mark. So I think this is a bit unique because I think this is probably one of the first ones that's come before you that is actually not in the AE zone, but it's in the velocity zone. So there are a number of requirements, obviously, in the velocity zone that are different than the AE. Now the building's on pilings. We're raising it. The minimum elevations are to the lowest structural member, which takes us up into the ground, out of the ground even higher. So the building needs to have two access points. I mean, the one in the back, occurs basically, or the harbor side occurs in an area that is already structure, but we've got to get into that building, and whether we do it along that north face or try to incorporate it into that easterly side where that open porch or whatever that is called is there right there, it's going to extend out further than what is already there. I mean, the only way to get in and out of this building and comply with the requirements for the velocity zone or we have to do the stairways the way they are. They're the minimal amount that need to be done to get access. I think you're going to see these on a number of cases as these properties down, at least on the Wharf side, start to be redeveloped. And these people are going to be in a catch-22. I mean, I think in these cases, we have to look at the 50-foot no build, a little bit differently, only because the coastal resiliency issue has to be addressed, but you've got to still be able to utilize the buildings and get access to them. And whether that stairway is on the north face, whether it's on the east, it still has to be an access stair that meets code. The building itself, is on a pilings. It's basically staying as the footprint that is. It's just getting elevated. So again, I hope you can see it our way here on what we proposed, and we could get this building elevated in accordance with the current regulations.
And if I may just add to that comment, for those commissioners that were not there for the last meeting, we had proposed adding to the structure, which would have been an enclosed structure. We were adding to the building. So this is not an enclosed air-conditioned structure. It's just a staircase.
You. Linda, I see your hand up, and then Mark, I'll go to you.
I'm having trouble with the resistance to this on the commercial wharf side. It's already heavily developed. It's heavily trafficked because I go that way all the time, the back way to the High Line. So I'm well aware of how much traffic is on that side, plus the NIR traffic parking lot. That's how you enter from the backside there, on the backside of the old electric building. And I would rather see the building come up out of the floodplain. And if we want that kind of thing, given the coastal resiliency, at least from an HGC point of view and a planning point of view, I think it's a positive thing to pull it up out. And when we pull it up out, how are you supposed to get into it? Jump into it, use a ladder to get into it? It necessitates, it's going on all over Brant Point. People are coming up out of the floodplain. And the bylaw has even changed as far as the zoning is concerned. If you have to go up, then you have to be able to get steps, obviously increase the amount of steps to actually access the structure. And this is on the developed north side. And I don't have an issue with this. I don't know how else you get into the structure, but I'm happier that it's coming up out of the ground and that they got rid of the actual enclosed section. So I don't know how we're having a problem with it on that side of the building. They're not adding onto the water side of the building anymore. They're adding the steps to get into the building from the north side, which is how they should be getting into the building. I'd rather keep them off the beach. So I'm just flummoxed by it.
Yeah, Linda, I think what commissioners are struggling with is the fact that the stairs do count as new structural area within the 50-foot, which is generally a no build zone for us.
Yep, I got that.
Yeah, I know I stated at the last meeting that I understood that stairs might need to be put in, and I know I can think of a project in Wawinit where they had to add a few extra stairs in a no build zone.
Yep, I got that.
So I am understanding of that, but again, it is within our regulations to not have building there, and that's where these commissioners are kind of falling. Maybe there's some way to mitigate on site. I'm not sure. But I know Paul also had his hand up, so I want to make sure or not Paul, excuse me, Mark had his hand up.
I just had one more comment. I just find this such a unique, that wharf is crazy, and it's really been developed for a long, long time. There was a huge restaurant down at the end of it at one point that burned down many years ago. But it's a very unique situation, and they really don't have any other alternative. That's my point.
Yes, I think you are right there.
Ashley, did Mark want, I'd like to speak again.
I know Mark had his hand up when
Okay.
Linda had her hand up, so I want to make sure he has a comment, and then Paul, I'll go to you.
Sure.
Thank you, Ashley. I think, Paul, that the commissioners several of us anyway, expressed cooperation with you in expanding the eastern staircase on the eastern side of the house as needed because of you're raising the house. And I still feel that way, that I think we would cooperate with an expansion of that in the no build zone there. And looking at the picture of the house from Commercial Street, there's 2 cars in the yard. They're almost in the street now, and I'm wondering if you put in a staircase, which is going to be 3 or 4 feet wide, if I wouldn't even put the cars in the street. But that's not the issue really. The issue is,
yeah,
I think it's the no build zone troubles me the most.
Okay. Mark, part of the application is the relocation to the other side of the driveway. So that is shown on the plan to relocate the driveway. And if I could, to kind of, I think I know where, what Seth was starting to allude to, but so if this was new construction, I'm sure there's the way the architecture could be designed. So the stairway is incorporated, say, within the footprint, into the footprint of the existing building. This is an existing dwelling. It's currently on piers. And the way the stairway, the easiest way to accomplish the access to this building is to append along that northerly face. Whereas if it was new construction, you were building in the velocity zone, you could incorporate, say, a stairway in the entry, and it would be hidden. I think there's obviously flexibility that any of the architects on this island could adapt to. In this situation, we have an existing structure on a pile foundation. We need to have we can't have one access. I can't have one entry into the building. So I have to have the 2 access points. I'm sure that's a fire code and a building code issue. And, if we're the first ones in the line, so be it. But I just feel like you're going to have to be flexible on the 50-foot no build on cases where the structure is existing. You're trying to meet the coastal resiliency component. I don't think it's setting a precedent. If it's setting a precedent, the precedent is people have to adapt to these buildings as the buildings have to be elevated to be code compliant. If that's the precedent, so be it. I think the commission has a valid point to stand on with regard to the 50-foot no build. Believe me, I respect the 50-foot no build. I fully understand where this commission comes from in many of these cases. And in a lot of these cases, the client and we can adapt to that. But if you can explain to me how I can elevate this building, again, in the velocity zone, and then meet the building code compliance and get access to it, I mean, and unless you go in and completely redesign and redo this building and try to and somehow get this stairway in the inside, which just doesn't make any sense, it just can't be done. I mean, I think and I understand where you're coming from, but I think 50, we've got to be flexible forward with especially these properties down on the wharf. I've got a couple clients further down on Commercial Street on these older cottages that are literally they're at grade right now. And when we're talking now about what they have to do, it's not easy for some of these older structures to try to come up into current code compliance. So, I mean, I feel that the 50-foot in this case, I know you're uneasy with it. I don't think it sets a precedent with regard to other projects, whether it's even projects on Holbert Avenue. Most of the projects on Holbert Ave are in the AE zone. We're dealing with a completely different criteria when we're in the velocity zone. So I would hope that you could kind of see this our way here and understand the design constraints that everyone in this situation is going to be dealing.
Thank you, Paul. Ian, I know your hand's been up. Seth, I just saw you as well.
Thank you, Ashley. So, Paul, I think, we're all sympathetic within the constraints of the regulations. What I don't understand is that the current access on the commercial wharf side is from the northwest corner. And what I don't understand is why that can't be modified to take the raising of the building into account. And I realized that clearly would be more expensive than just tacking stairs onto the side. But that's not really the issue that we deal with. And so when you talk about precedent, I do think it would be considered precedent. And I'm sure that the rest of your clients on Commercial Wharf will immediately point to that and say, that's why we need to do the same thing. So that's why I have, one of the reasons why I have a reservation about this. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, Ian.
Even on the westerly side, Ian, the stairway is still going to extend outside of what is there right now. If you look at the number of stairs that I need to get into this building, right now I've got 4 stairs coming in. It's going to extend no matter what on that side either. I mean, this case, by some stroke of luck, I mean, the staircase in the back occurs within an area that was already structured. I mean, that's just sheer luck in this case.
So Paul, I understand what you're saying. I'm saying is that the building needs to be modified within its footprint to allow for the staircase to go where there's now 4. I mean, clearly the building would have to be modified to allow for the raising and an increased stair going up. And that's something, and that would be within the existing footprint.
I mean, I don't, like I said, I do not want to, I mean, I may continue this here. I'm not sure which way I'm going to go with this, and I don't want to belabor this point, but I think the precedent you'd be setting is that this board supports the coastal resiliency and the problems that people are going to have in trying to deal with it. And whether that means going in and spending money and redoing the interior of a house because you're going to have a few steps in the 50-foot setback in an area where the building is already in the 50-foot setback. It just doesn't, I can't see it. I don't know what is the benefit here? What are we doing by not putting these stairs in this particular area? I mean, what is the harm of these stairs being supported? The environmental harm of adding these stairways in this particular, in the 50-foot setback. And I honestly just do not see it. I mean, as again, the precedent is set. Great. It's a great precedent. This board supports getting structures in compliance with the flood zone.
And this is Anna. If I
I
can
know,
make
guys, all right, hold on a second. There's like a large queue right now of people wanting to speak. So I want to make sure to keep it orderly and not repetitive. So if Paul is finished, then I know Seth needs to speak. Linda has her hand up. Then RJ has his hand up. And then Ann, I can go to you.
Well, Ashley, could I just have one? I mean, I think from our end, I think we're done. I mean, Ann, and I'm going to recommend Ann. I think we're done. I'm done speaking. I think we listen to the board. And then I think I can make a decision on what we want to do for the meeting. I think that's going to be the best thing here for everybody to move on. Oh, if that's okay with you, Ashley, that's what I'd like to do.
Yeah, I think that's fine, Paul. And maybe when we have seven commissioners, it'll be easier, but I do want to make sure to get these last questions or comments.
Sure. I appreciate it.
So Seth, I'll go to you, and then Linda, I'll go to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Paul, I hear you, and I'm not envious of the situation. I understand it's difficult, but it is actually the velocity zone itself that's giving me pause here. We have dealt with very few of these, but we have seen a few other ones. And for those of you who don't know, the velocity zone is different than the AE zone because that's an area of coastal flood hazard where you're actually getting wave action and you're getting a significant chance of coastal flooding on an annual basis. And if you look at our regulations, not only for buffer zone to coastal beach, which we've already talked about the 50-foot setback, there's also issues here with the regulations under land subject to coastal storm flowage. Specifically, if you look at number 1, the work shall not reduce the ability of the land to absorb and contain floodwaters. I guess you're raising the house, but you're still adding a pad for the stairs, which is going to cause an impact there. And then also, I think the most salient is number 4, building upon areas subject to coastal storm flowage in locations where such structure would be subject to storm damage may not be permitted. So, yeah, is it hard to engineer or design a way to get everything you need into this footprint? I'm sure it is. That's why I'm not in that field. But I would imagine there is some way to do it. And I'm asking that you look into that. That's really all I have to say.
Thank you, Seth. Linda?
Again, I'm nonplussed here. I'm not about to suggest that somebody rip apart a part of the house in order to get stairs into the body of the house. And I don't think the HDC, the ping-ponging back and forth between us and the HDC, it's happened many times between HDC and the ZBA, the HDC and the planning board, now the HDC and us. I'm not going to tell somebody that they have to rip apart the house to put stairs into the body of the house, because that actually to me is going to be more destructive. I'm still looking at the positive, given what Seth just said about stormwater and the wave action over there. I'm more impressed by the fact that they're coming up to code. And that should be something we should really consider, that they are coming up out to get out of where they're in danger and put the stairs in so they can get into the house. I think we have to weigh the pros and cons here. And I think the pro is getting it up, giving them the next couple of steps and moving on. But for me to suggest that they would rip apart the house to get the stairs into the body of the house, I'm never going to do that. I just got to tell you right now, I am never going to do that down there, because that causes damage to a potentially historic structure. It causes more damage to try to rip it apart and rebuild it. So they're still working within that, inside the 50 to do that activity. Adding the stairs by simply picking it up and putting it back on the piers, we're out of the danger zone, AE zone. I'm all for it.
Thank you, Linda. I think, Seth's points were kind of speaking towards the velocity zone and the fact that these stairs are still in that zone. But I think, regardless of what side you're on here, I think we've all kind of gotten our points out. Joe, I saw your hand up. I know RJ still has his hand up. Seth, I saw you as well. Joe, do you want to make a comment?
Yes, I support Linda's position.
Okay, thank you. Seth?
I'll be brief. And Madam Chair, if I may respond to Linda.
Okay.
I'm not asking them to rip apart the structure. They're proposing to enclose part of the structure over the porch, where there is currently an open porch with the stairs. If they just revise their design to have that be some type of stair that maybe wasn't straight, I don't know what the HTC would approve or not, but I've never been to the HTC. I don't know what they would think about something that curved or who knows what, but they're not ripping apart their house. They have an area there where some type of stairs could theoretically be built. Will it be accepted by any other permitting board? I don't know. But our review here has nothing to do with building, zoning, HGC, anything else. It has to do with Concom wetland jurisdiction only.
Thank you, Seth. RJ?
Thank you, Madam Chair. RJ again for the Nantucket Land Council. I'm not certain if Mr. Santos has applied for a waiver, but this one actually strikes me as one where the commission can figure something out here and find a no reasonable alternative and grant a waiver for this, because at the end of the day, there is no reasonable alternative. I do question the enclosure on that porch, but providing access and getting this up out of the way of gales and nor'easters for the foreseeable future should be heavily considered, and the Land Council appreciates them dropping the addition. So thank you.
Thank you, RJ. Anne, your hand is still up. Do you have a comment?
I do. Just to answer on the feasibility of that enclosure, the existing stairs, there is not enough space to enclose to expand the stairs within the structure without doing that heavy destruction. That would turn this into a completely different project, because then you're removing supporting exterior walls. The other thing I just wanted to address is, yes, we do go back to HDC, which wants a front door and front staircase. That's their preference. That's why we had to go back a few times. And I understand that's not this commission's concern, but I just want to give you that background. The other thing we took into consideration was that the house next to us is getting moved, and that's going to be a park. And rather than having cars next to a park, we thought it was nicer to move the driveway to the west side, which is near some utility easements and next to the Harborview cottages. And then you would have the park, it would look nicer for the town and the park. So we had taken that all into consideration. That is why, first structurally, second for HDC, third for the land banks and the park that they're creating, that we switch the parking to the other side.
Thank you. Are there any final comments or questions? Looks like no. Paul, what would you like to do?
I would like to make one final comment and continue. I respect you all know that, but I really think in this one that we're getting by not allowing this, there's a sense that this somehow has some adverse effect, and I just do not see it. It's adding a small pad in a velocity zone. It's the ocean. It's got zero effect. And I'm going to ask for continuance. Maybe we can all think about this. We come back in a few weeks and maybe we find some common ground.
Okay.
I have one question. What about a New England cottage style? There's no pad at the bottom of the stairs if the pad is the issue of concern. Obviously, the staircase will be attached to the house. It can't be fully cantilevered. It could be, there would be some posts into the ground, but we don't put a concrete slab at the bottom of the stairs, if that is the commission's concern.
I think any reduction in structural area would be seen favorably by the commission. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, we could just have a stepping stone.
Yeah. I think that would probably be received favorably, but again, I can't speak for my fellow commissioners. So I think we'll take Paul's words into consideration, and everybody will think this one over. Paul, would you like to continue until September 8th?
I surely would.
Okay. Ian, did you have a comment, question?
I was just going to say bother. I mean, it's just terrible being caught in the middle of this. Anyway, all right, all the best.
We will get there. We will get there, guys. I'm confident.
All right, so we'll see you on September 8th for this one.
Okay.
Thank you. And that brings us to the Sachem Trust at 8 Sachem Road, represented by Brian Madden.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks, Brian Madden from LEC. At the last meeting, received some feedback regarding the driveway modification, and as proposed, we were matching the existing disturbance between the 25 and 50-foot buffer zones. It was at 62%, and we went back, sharpened the pencil, and were able to revise the driveway layout to comply with the 50% performance standard. One of the complications was there's a transformer along Sachem that conceivably would require an act of God to relocate that, but we were able to shift the driveway entrance to the east side of that and still make everything work. And we're proposing to revegetate areas currently occupied by lawn or driveway between the 25 and 50 foot, and a small portion also within the 25 foot, with native vegetation, including arrowwood, sweet pepperbush, highbush blueberry, and bayberry. So I believe those updates address the commission feedback that we got at the last meeting, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Brian. Always appreciate when you sharpen that pencil and refine details. So thank you.
No problem.
Any questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no. So we'll open it up for public comment. Does not appear that we have any public comment. Jeff, do we have everything we would need to close?
Yes, you do.
Brian, would you like to close?
Please.
Is there a motion to close? Motion made by Mark, seconded by Ian. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Landowski,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
That carries unanimously.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Brian. And that moves us on to Murphy Foundlier at 9 Massachusetts Avenue, represented by David Haynes.
Good afternoon, guys. Hopefully this won't be as just, but it might be a little bit. What we've got here is a notice of intent to construct a boardwalk out off of Mass Ave across the salt marsh to a beach on the other side of the property. It is considered a water dependent use. And there are actually the two houses next door have similar boardwalks. At the outset, I just want to let you know we do have to continue this because we have not heard back from Natural Heritage. And so we will be continuing it. It is a salt marsh. We were proposing to put in a 3-foot wide boardwalk at 1.5 to 2 feet high, similar to the two next door. However, we did get comments back from DEP and actually have gotten comments back from Department of Marine Fisheries strongly suggesting that we raise the boardwalk up to 1.5 times the width of the boardwalk, which would be up to, what did I figure, 54 inches, which is 4.5 feet. We had proposed building the boardwalk on helical, we are proposing to build it on helical piers set in the ground and raising the boardwalk up. However, at a height of 2 feet. However, because of the increased height and building code, we are going to be required to put a railing on it. We were not proposing a railing before. The other two boardwalks do not have railings. So we are in a hardship here about whether or not to raise it up and put railings on it. Marine Fisheries also cited the possibility of horseshoe crabs laying eggs on the beach in here, and so they recommended a time period. I just got the email and I haven't even downloaded.
I
So,
know.
and
I'm
we're
stuck at a
willing.
Concom meeting.
We are willing to work with any timeframes. that-
Linda, can you mute? Sorry, David, go ahead.
No problem. The helical piers would be installed, but it's like an A-frame on wheels that goes along. Planks would be put down on the salt marsh when non-flooded period, and go along and put in the helical piers down to a depth I've heard up to 11 feet to get below the peat layer in there, and to then build the structure on top of it. It would be a fiber grate type of planking that would allow passage of sunlight. The reason they're requiring 1.5 times height to width ratio is because they've done some recent studies and found that there's enough sunlight lost to reduce the biomass in the salt marsh. I will, in the next 2 weeks, I want to take a look at the other other boardwalks and see if I notice any appreciable, and I will try to document that for your benefit. But right now I'm going on the assumption that we should probably follow their guidelines of 1.5 times, but with a railing. With that, I would open it up to any questions that you may have.
Thank you, David. So I saw Seth's hand up and Ian. So Seth, I'll go to you, and then Ian, I'll go to you.
Actually, Ian was first.
Okay.
I
Ian,
was.
I'll go to you.
And I've got both hands up, so.
Perfect.
So, we had this, we examined this exhaustively with the other boardwalk, as you know, David. And we all went out there, and it makes a huge difference to wetland views. And so I'm absolutely dead set against the railing there. And, show me the science about the horseshoe crabs. And, it's, if you need to, split the damn thing in half so that you walk like this to get down there. Anyway, thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, Ian. Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And David, I have a similar point. At 10 Mass Ave, we talked about this extensively. We talked about the opportunity for railings, for cabling, for rope, all sorts of alternatives. And all of them were deemed to be detrimental to wetland scenic views and also to bird passage in that area, which this is a very productive salt marsh for bird nest activity. I think I've heard the 1.5 times elevation before in reference to wooden boardwalks, but I have never heard that for fibergrate. The whole idea of why fibergrate was invented in the first place is to allow sunlight penetration. So I'll look into what they said and I'll do some research, but I've never heard that before.
Thank you, Seth. David?
If I may, through Ashley, they did a study. You're absolutely right. It was the original study was with cedar planking with a spacing between the slats. And then they make a reference to a graded, and there was, and they refer to a graded planking. Now they didn't. I haven't seen. I'm still researching this a little bit. I haven't seen any reference to the fiber grate yet, because I understand that lets a lot more light through. They use it on greenhouses basically. But I haven't seen any of their. I'm going to do some follow up with marine fisheries and see if I can get an input on that. As I said, I just got this. We got the file number and we're responding to that, and then I got the marine fisheries letter. And as to the horseshoe crabs, that's not a big issue for us to set the timing, so it's not in the middle of nesting season. That's not a problem. But I'm going to look into the efficacy of the fiber grate versus other grate systems, and definitely the planking. But they did cite the graded ones didn't let that much more light through than the planks did. But I didn't see any reference to the fiber grate. So point well taken.
Thank you, David. I know I would like to see the letters and things you received as well, since we didn't have that information. Seth, I saw your hand go back up.
Yeah, thank you, David. And thanks for clarifying with them. Sometimes maybe they don't really always understand exactly the material that you're planning to use. So that'll be helpful. And just for my fellow commissioners, if you haven't seen what fibergrate looks like before, I recommend, looking it up online. It's essentially hollow. I would be shocked to learn that a scientific study said that light didn't go through that. So let's see what they have to say.
What I've seen is that vegetation grows through. It comes up under the bottom and grows it. And I've been told you need to mow it once in a while. So I've got a couple of cases that I'm going to look at to determine whether. I've looked a lot under bridges. I've been involved in many cases through my career, and putting a bridge across a wetland and trying to argue that it does not impact because there sometimes is difficult, and I find that shading is definitely an impact to a wetland, and there's no question about that. But in this case, where with the fiber grade and a lot of light, and frankly, this is all low growing vegetation, black grass. It's all low growing. It's not like tall vegetation in there. So I will come back in 2 weeks with some more information for you.
Well, thank you, David. I just want to make sure there's no other comments. Mark?
Yes, what is the last word about fiber what?
Great.
GRATE.
So
grade.
Great.
Great.
GRATE.
Okay.
If you've ever been to the land bank trails, like by Gardner, the little bridge they have there is fiber grate.
It's like a fiberglass. It's like a fiberglass with holes in it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's translucent.
Yeah.
Less light through too.
All right. So if there are no other commissioners' comments, I'll open it up to the public. I don't see any public comment on YouTube. So David, would you like to continue for 2 weeks until September 8th?
Yes, please.
Okay, this will continue until September 8th. And that,
Thank you very much.
thank you. So that moves us on to 88 Pacomo LLC at 88 Pacomo Road, and this is represented by Mark Ritz.
Good afternoon, Mark Ritz from Site Design, representing the applicants at 88 Pocomo. Just to give you a quick refresher, back in February, we came in with an NOI for some grading, a house development of this site, and the commission approved that. And we did some of the grading and clearing work, and the applicant has decided to do some redesigns of the reconfiguration of the house. And instead of modifying the old order, we've just come in with a new notice of intent. So to give you a quick rundown, the limit of work shown by the orange silt fence line is the same limit of work that was approved under the original approval. The location of the house, porches, and decks is essentially the same. The house has a few more jogs in it. The footprint has been modified a little bit, but it is essentially the same size and in the same location. The grading has been modified slightly. The biggest change I can tell you is that the original approval had a house with a top of foundation at 44 feet. And the current proposal is to go 2 feet lower and to have a top of foundation at 42 feet. Everything else is essentially, almost identical to what was approved back in February, with just some slight layout differences. We're not any closer to the 50-foot buffer. We don't have any work inside the 25-foot buffer. We're actually doing less filling and grading on this one than on the one that was originally approved. And in terms of what's being done within the 100-foot jurisdiction. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? I know I had one and I couldn't remember, and I don't think it was called out in your application. The stairs that are leading down to the beach, are those previously approved? Are you asking for those?
Those are previously approved, constructed, and certificate of compliance.
Okay, couldn't remember. Thank you. there are no questions or comments from commissioners, we'll open it up for public comment. It does not appear we have public comment on YouTube. So Jeff, do we have everything we would need to close?
Yes, you do.
Is there, or Mark, would you like to close? Okay.
Yes, please.
Oh, fun Zoom meetings again. Is there a motion to close? Motion made by Ian. Is there a second? Seconded by Seth. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Erisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Plendowski,
Aye.
and it looks like we lost Linda. So that carries unanimously without Linda.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. That moves us on to 41 Holbert LLC at 41 Holbert Avenue, represented by Paul Santos.
Thank you, and I have such a good feeling about this application right now. So this is 41 Halbert Avenue. Paul Santos from Nantucket Surveyors, applicant representing the applicant 41 Halbert LLC. This is an existing property located on Halbert Avenue. It's bordered on the south by Halbert and the north by Nantucket Harbor. Is the former Cross residence that contains 2 dwellings. The application before you is the proposed elevating of the existing dwelling to include access stair expansion with associated landscaping and utility installation within the buffer zone to a coastal bank, which is the timber bulkhead. And we are within land subject to coastal storm flowage. This one is in an AE zone. So we're elevating the structure from elevation 6.8 to an elevation 10. We are expanding an existing stairway along the back deck and adding a new access to replace an existing access. We're moving that from the easterly side of the structure to the westerly side. Both of those expansions occur outside of the 50-foot no build. So this is an application with no waivers. The minimum first floor, as I said, would be elevation 10. We would construct a new foundation system that would include engineered flood openings. The existing structure does not currently have engineered flood openings. Existing grade will be maintained, and we will connect any type of roof drainage would be into a subsurface system, which would be incorporated into the gravel base for the foundation system. I do have a DEP file number, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Paul. Seth, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just asked again with the expanded access, if there are ways to, not have concrete there, or if there's ways to minimize that so that you're allowing the flood water to absorb into the area better. That'd be great. Thank you.
That could be, that's as the condition that we find. These are just wooden open stairways with the posts in the ground, and I'm sure that would not be a problem.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no. Oh, Jeff.
Paul said in his presentation that he has a DEP number. I didn't actually get one yet, Paul.
Yes, 41 Halbert LLC SE 483565.
Oh.
They didn't send you the email?
I got it on August 18th, actually. I can email it to you right now, Jeff, if you'd like.
Yeah, if you could, because. Oh, there she is. 3565. Sorry, it just got set to the wrong spot.
Okay, perfect. Ian, I see your hand up.
Thanks, Ashley. So Paul, it goes without saying, right, that they're open treads, no risers?
Correct. It's an exterior staircase.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no. Also does not appear that we have public comment. And we do now have a file number. So Jeff, do we have everything else we would need to close?
Yes.
Paul, would you like to close?
Yes.
Is there a motion to close? Motion made by Mark. Is there a second?
Sure.
Seconded by Joe. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Landowski. Oh, you're muted, Joe.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. And that moves us on to Stark Point LLC at 16 Easton Street, also represented by Paul Santos.
Thank you. Again, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors, representing the property owner Stark Point LLC for a property located at 16 Easton Street, essentially 16th Street, Easton Street extension, if you will. This is the property on the southerly side of Easton Street, bordered on the north by Easton Street extension, south by Nantucket Harbor. Property to the east is the U.S. Coast Guard owned property. Property to the west is a 22 Easton Street, which was an application that was recently before the board, and it's actually an active construction site as we speak. This application is for the proposed redevelopment, if you will, of the property. It would be proposing to demolish the two existing dwellings that exist on the property. There is a one-story and two-story dwelling located adjacent to the 50-foot no-build currently, and there is a two-story dwelling which is located at the Easton Street extension portion of the property. The regulated or resource areas are land within subject to coastal storm flowage, and the proposed main dwelling is within the buffer zone coastal bank, which is essentially the steel bulkhead associated with Nantucket Harbor. The proposal would be to construct a dwelling in essentially the same location as the main dwelling on the property. This would occur as the existing dwelling is also outside of the 50-foot no build, that line being from the bulkhead or coastal bank. We would be reconstructing a new structure in the general vicinity of the two-story dwelling, which is on the front side of the property. That also has a garage component, currently has a garage component to it, and this would also have a garage / dwelling. Then there'd be a smaller unit built essentially in the location of the existing shell driveway. The shell driveway would then be made smaller and would access both the two front dwellings, and then there'd just be a walkway or a walking area to the back main house. This is located in the AE flood zone. The current structures themselves currently do not have engineered flood openings. The existing dwelling is on a pile type of foundation. The front dwelling is a concrete foundation with some larger openings, not necessarily engineered flood openings. Minimum first floor elevation for this particular area would be elevation 8.3. Current grade on the site is approximately elevation 3. For the most part, the elevation 3 is the entire area of the site. There'd be no proposed fill to be brought in. Each of the structures would have concrete foundation with engineered flood openings. Typically would use the smart vent flood openings in this particular case. Roof drainage would be tied to the subsurface system that would be installed as part of the foundation footing system, gravel with the gravel subbase. And this particular case, they would be applying to the DPW, Natural Resources, Board of Health, Town Administration for a temporary connection or discharge to the stormwater collection system, as stormwater or dewatering would be required as part of the foundation installation on the building, on the structure itself. We're proposing to put erosion control along the 25-foot no disturb zone. Currently, the area from the back of the structure to the bulkhead or the steel sheeting itself is lawn area, and area in between the two structures is presently lawn. Then you have the shell driveway. The site itself is serviced by town water and town sewer. Those connections would be continued or expanded on as part of this application. One component we do have on the proposed main house, we do have a smaller vault area that would be enclosed within the existing footprint of the foundation. This would be an area which would be just a waterproof vault, if you will, constructed on that interior subfloor or below the first floor in order to house some utilities for the main dwelling. The perimeter or the area of the main house would have the requisite flood vents for its size. Flood venting basically is based on the square footage. For that number of square feet, you need to provide an appropriate flood vent for that particular size. Typically, the smart vents we're using in these particular applications, every flood vent that is installed equates to 200 square feet of footprint area. So if you have a 3,400 square foot building divided by 200, that's typically how many flood vents will be required. That applies for all the particular structures. That does include areas in which there would be a garage. Garage doors don't count as flood openings. So in each case, each one of these structures with regard to ground cover or footprint area would have the requisite flood venting, the particular engineered flood vents. Let's see, the buildings themselves would all be, again, code compliant with regard to 9th edition of the building code, and also standards of FEMA with regard to framing, first floor elevations, and so forth. I think that is it. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you, Paul. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Overall, I think it looks good, but I do have some concerns about the proposed vault area. Because again, getting back to the performance standards for land subject to coastal storm flowage, performance standard number 1 is shall not reduce the ability of the land to absorb and contain floodwaters, especially at that elevation there. You would, by having that relatively large waterproof vault there, it would be redirecting floodwaters back into the sides of the structure. I don't exactly know how that would work with the rest of the venting. Seems like there'll be about 17 vents, but just concerned that will reduce the ability of the floodwaters to actually go where they're supposed to be going.
Thank you, Seth. I know when I looked over this application, I had a similar concern about the waterproof vault and about the area's ability to hold floodwaters. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no at this point, so we'll open it up for public comment. It does not appear we have any public comment. Mark?
Well, as a matter of interest, are you proposing 3 dwellings on the property? I see you.
No, I
Yes.
think there wouldn't be 3 dwellings. It'd be like a studio type of, I'm only allowed the 2. I believe I think it's 2 dwellings, and then whether the garage is more of a garage studio, or I don't know how the architects have this broken out here, but not sure how they plan on permitting that.
Thank you, Paul. And just a sort of different follow-up, if I may. Paul, what do you do to prepare the ground underneath these houses when you're building it? I assume it'll be a concrete foundation or helix piers.
These would be concrete. Typically in Brant Point, what they're doing is they're concrete foundations. So typically what they'll do is, obviously you have a shallow groundwater. So they'll excavate the property, basically through the groundwater, lay a stone bedding within that groundwater area, elevate above the groundwater, and then that's where basically the footings are then placed within that particular area. And that's typically what they'll do, because for the most part, you have a good base material. It's going to be sand, albeit in the groundwater. So it's just basically excavate the entire area where the footprint is, bring in stone, put the stone in, then the footing is elevated on top of that. That's typically why most of these, they do require the temporary dewatering.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Actually, I do have a DEP file number on this one also. Jeff, I don't know if you received that one, but it came in the same day as the other one I had.
Yeah, I found a bunch of missing ones. We've had issues with it going to Joanne's old address sometimes.
Oh, okay.
So I have found this one and then the one for 40 Easton Street too, because weirdly enough, when I double checked today, they're not actually logged into the EEA's like online lookup system. So I will get that corrected with them, but they must have had a different review or something. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
And if I could, Ashley and Seth, I know, because I kind of went back a little bit and thought on the vault, the idea of the vault itself, and kind of came, I think there was maybe one other area. I know there was an elevator on one of these homes we put in. This was years ago. This commission never saw it, but there was an elevator actually in the home where, it had to be obviously an enclosed area. And what my thought was here was that was potentially take the area of the vault, which I think it's under 400 square feet. I want to say it's around 300 and let's just say it's 400 square feet. And then take that particular area, treat it as a separate entity, and then add two, if it was 400 square feet, it would be 2 additional flood vents, and then add additional flood venting on the main home to increase the flow to accommodate for that particular enclosure within the foundation area. And that was really the only way I thought would maybe at least mitigate that internal area. It would adding another 400 or 600, 2 vents would be 400 square feet, would be add the additional vents along the front of the building or on the side to accommodate for that enclosure.
Paul, just a question, and Ian, I've seen your hand up, and Seth, I saw yours go back up. With like the utilities in this vault, it wouldn't then meet flood compliance, right? Because it needs to be raised above, or it does because it's vaulted?
I think because it's vaulted. I don't know. I don't think Lisa Botticelli may be on, but I know Lisa's been working with the builder on the FEMA requirements on what they can and can't do within that vaulted area, because it becomes a waterproof vault. I think there is a way. Obviously, there must be some way under the building code, and that's why they're proposing it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I can answer that, Ashley, if you want to. We did do that on another project at 30 Easton Street, where we created a vaulted area. It was in a slightly different situation because it was in a garage area, but it was, at grade. And then all the mechanical equipment was within that. And the foundation wall went up above the flood zone so that no flood waters could enter.
Okay.
And it wasn't, okay, you're welcome.
Ian, I saw your hand up, and Seth, I saw yours as well.
You did, Ashley. So I have now sort of two questions where I'm puzzled. And so with respect, Paul, it says on the plan, proposed garage guest house, proposed cottage, and proposed main house. And I know my math isn't what it used to be, but how does that add up to 2?
I can answer that. Sorry.
Thank you.
The larger building is the guest house garage. The smaller structure is a single-story gym. It's not a dwelling.
I see. All right. But and also what sort of the sacrificial flood vents. I thought flood vents were supposed to be adequate to the task to begin with, hence the formula. So by adding extras to try and compensate for the waterproof vault, I don't really follow the logic, because we're still stuck with the vault being there, which I'm not very keen on, I have to say.
Yeah.
Thank
Well,
you.
the vault is internal to the footprint. So the flood vents you're calculating, say the ground cover of the structure, Ian, is 3,457 square feet. So that's what divide that by the 200. That's the number of flood vents. I think 17 or 18. Seth, I think if my math is right. So that's already accommodated for. Where this is an internal component. Again, it's just the amount of area that you're allowing floodwaters to pass through. So, I mean, it's a unique situation. I think, by adding a few more of the flood vents does then create a greater flow through the structure, as opposed to, not allowing less to pass through. So.
Thank you, Paul. And Ian, are you finished with your questions?
Yeah, I'm not satisfied, but I'm finished. Thank you.
Seth, I'll go to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Paul, is there a way, an engineering way to configure the flood vents or do anything else to direct the water to go to a specific location? Like, could you configure the flood vents so the water goes on each side of the vault rather than straight into the vault, or is that not possible?
I don't think it's possible. I mean, you can obviously where you put the flood vents, wherever you place them is where the flood water is either going to enter or exit. So, and I'm not sure when the engineers actually place the flood vents, whether there's some science to how they do it. Because obviously what I'm looking for when I do a flood certificate, I'm just looking to make sure that they have the right number. I don't know if there's because you never know which way the flood water is going to be how it potentially could be coming. It's obviously storm dependent, and I'm not sure, Seth, whether you could direct or not direct it.
That's a good question. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Not, we'll open it up for public comment. Does not appear that we have any public comment at this point. So I know I'm still a little bit concerned about the subsurface vault, as far as allowing floodwaters to pass and actually absorb in that location. I don't know how other commissioners are feeling regarding that at this point, because there's 5 of us. Or Paul, if you think there's any way you could revise that besides adding flood vents.
Well, I'm thinking maybe we would potentially close the hearing with the subsurface waterproof vault kind of off the table for this particular component, and if we were to come back, if I was to come back, seeing as you've already seen this, if we came back with this as a minor mod, but with a sufficient mitigation for the vault, would the commission entertain it that way, or would you prefer to continue it one hearing and deal with it as part of the body of the notice of the current order? I'm kind of willing to go either way with it, but I'm just not sure what.
It looks like Jeff has an opinion, and since he's the one who kind of deals with the organization, I'll let him speak.
I actually think I don't mind the removing it kind of on the fly and putting it in the order that way that it's been removed, which leads me to believe that it would be a lot smarter to come back with an amended order request. That way you can change the order to properly reflect it in the recorded document. And since minor mods don't get recorded, I think that could lead to certificate of compliance issues later. So I think if you did it that way, you have to do it as an amended.
Okay, and if I could, Ashley, and kind of speak to Lisa, Lisa, if that's the case, then Lisa, are you comfortable with me continuing for a few weeks to deal just strictly with the fact that we'll leave it in the order as it is, and then come back and see if we can find a way to keep it in the plan? It would obviously would be 2 weeks that would come back.
So that would be to the September 8th meeting, correct?
That would be correct.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I mean, I'm not a scientist, and so, but I guess I always assumed that if there was a little barrier, the floodwaters would go around and it wouldn't necessarily get trapped. But we can certainly speak to our engineer to see if he might have a thought process in terms of designing the foundation and the layout of the flood vents to mitigate any concern that you might have.
Perfect.
Thank you. And Mark, do you have a final question or comment?
I do. The water, the vault is strictly for utilities. Is that right, Paul?
Yes, strictly utilities.
Yeah.
So air conditioners. I'm trying to think of what else it might be.
Boiler, hot water heater. I don't think you'd put electrical panels down there because it would be those would be above on the first floor or the second floor, but more of the bigger pieces of equipment.
If I may follow up, Ashley.
Yeah.
So I mean, if some commissioners are reluctant on the subsurface waterproof vault, as I am, I think you should be prepared maybe to put the utilities maybe somewhere in the house or nearby.
Yeah, I understand. We'll have to come up with a different plan.
Okay.
I have a question though, because in another project, we did it within the interior of the garage. Is that a possibility? It's a slightly different issue because it's still at grade, but I don't know, just asking the question.
I'd have to see the application from the previous vault you're talking about, because I actually don't remember that off the top of my head.
Yeah, it might have been before you were on the commission. Actually, it was probably 10 years ago, 12 years ago.
Yeah, so it would be good for us to kind of see that to compare, I guess, the situation.
Okay.
We're almost, maybe Ian sat on that one, but he'd be the only.
I think it's, well, my memory being what it is, I can't remember, but I have a feeling that it's before my time even. But, like Mark, I'd rather see them raised above the flood zone in another part of the complex.
Yeah, I think the other alternative is to put another add on to the little cottage or the gym, excuse me, and create something above grade that would be another structure.
Okay.
Which wouldn't be our first choice, but we'll investigate all those options.
Okay, well, we appreciate you looking into this with more detail, and we'll continue for 2 weeks until September 8th.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And I do want to say my computer seems a little glitchy, or Ian, I'm not sure if you're frozen, but my computer seems to be acting up, so I apologize if you guys lose me.
Well, my joints are definitely getting creakier, but I don't feel completely frozen at the moment.
Okay, because that's what I'm seeing of your picture. So
Oh, really?
it must be my screen. So if you lose me, it's my computer. All right, so we're gonna move on to Stephen L. Cohen, trustee at 6 and 11 East Halwell Lane, represented by Mark Ritz.
Good afternoon, Mark Ritz from Site Design, representing the applicants at 6 and 11 East Hallowell. And the project you have before you, help us all, is a groin repair project. This one is substantially different than the one we spent quite a bit of time on recently. This is a groin that it's the easternmost groin in that groin field that makes up the shoreline in front of Hallowell and East Hallowell. I think there are 6 or 7 of them all right next to each other. This whole shoreline, the groins are filled pretty much to entrapment capacity on both sides. You can see the mean high water line is very close to the end of the groin. It's maybe 8 or 12 feet from the end of the groin. This groin is substantially buried on both sides. You can pretty much step over it along the majority of its length. And it hasn't sustained any damage. Timbers and piles are simply starting to decay over time. So our intention here is to remove any damaged piles, replace them with new piles, and remove boards that are starting to rot or decay and replace them. We're not going to excavate this, all the way down to the bottom for the planking. We're just going to remove. We're going to, excavate a little bit on either side of the groin to see, the top couple boards, the ones that are exposed to, wetting drying cycles are the ones that tend to rot the most. So we're going to replace those as needed. We're not expanding, lengthening, changing the configuration of this structure in any way, shape, or form. This is a structure that dates back, I believe, to the 1950s or 60s. This one's even older than the last one we looked at. It's been on site, it's been maintained. There's a very well-developed beach in front of it on either side. So this is just a straight repair of what's there. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mark. I appreciate your alternatives analysis that was provided, but I think actually it's not. Some of the points you make aren't really that accurate. So you look at the unique character of the site, and as you said, the beach has built up quite a bit there, so much to the level that the groin proposing to be reconstructed is pretty much buried. And if you think about one of your alternative analyses being a living shoreline, you talk about, you don't really have the ability to do that. But I think this is actually an ideal location for a pilot project on living shoreline fronting a bulkhead. So not proposing to have the applicant remove the bulkhead. I think if the applicant decided to abandon the groin in place, let it stay building up the beach as it is right now, but not repair it, and then front that bulkhead with fringe salt marsh or some type of other living shoreline array, that would provide ample benefit to the resource area And I think it could be easily done within the confines of the site.
Thank you, Seth. Mark?
If I may, I mean, we have at this site a beach that is probably, well, there's a very wide coastal beach, I would say 100 feet plus. There's a coastal dune, which is at least partially vegetated naturally, and there's a coastal bank which is vegetated naturally on this site. All of that is there because of the groin field along this section of shoreline, because the end of this groin is still out in the water, as are the ends of all of these groins. If they're allowed to decay or are abandoned, their ability to keep sand in this location will cease to exist. And this shoreline, which has been stable largely in this configuration since these groins have been put in, will retreat like adjacent shorelines. We have a healthy beach, we have a healthy dune, and we have a healthy bank. Why mess with that? The groin, repairing this groin isn't going to cause any new or additional adverse impacts to replace existing piles and replace existing boarding. The system is doing very well. It's again a grandfathered structure which may be maintained and repaired. We think that any, putting in a salt marsh fronting this, we would have to basically put in a fringe marsh where we currently have a healthy beach. And why change something that's basically working reasonably well and is providing habitat. We just received late this afternoon, I don't know if the commission has gotten them yet, DMF review letters, which basically don't have any significant issue with the problem, except suggesting a time of year restriction for horseshoe crab habitat breeding, etc. But we have a stable beach dune system here, and all we're asking to do is to replace some piles and boards in the existing grandfathered groin.
Thank you, Mark. Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Mark, I take your point, but the desire to do this, to, move from a built environment type of structure to a natural nature-based solution, if you put a salt marsh there, it's going to be much more resilient in the face of sea level rise and climate change and the conditions on site. And the beach is going to continue way far past where it is now. I have a question for Mr. Carlson, if I may, Chair.
Yep, go ahead.
At what point can we have outside review, like Mr. Berman or someone else, look at some of these alternatives and consider whether they're feasible or not? Because I've been to presentations by Mr. Berman himself when he was specifically talking about the things that I've presented and are in the application that the applicant is saying are infeasible and other people have said are feasible. So I would like someone to look at it.
Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, we can have any application reviewed by a third-party reviewer. That's totally fine. I'm happy to check in if he's able to take a quick look too.
Yeah, I think that's a good request, Seth, especially since we're seeing a number of these types of applications. And we do kind of get the same consistent message that there's, no alternative that they can do when it might be feasible and better for the environment. Mark?
Without going too far down unpleasant rabbit holes, this, as with the recently permitted structure, well, first of all, this commission has approved similar repair and replacement of groins within the last 5 to 8 years on several other properties within this groin field. And, without going too far down the rabbit hole, as I said, this structure, much like the recently approved repair at Washing Pond, this is a grandfathered structure, and theoretically, as such, as we discussed previously, is a grandfathered pre-existing use and is, may be repaired by rights. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you, Mark. Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Ritz. I believe that the requirements to consider more environmentally friendly structures when doing replacements of groins or bulkhead pierce the veil of grandfathering. We don't have a legal opinion on that, but it's the way our regulations are written. It seems like that would be the case. And I think we should make sure we uphold our regulations.
Thank you, Seth. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? And I know for me personally with this one and the groins just being replaced, given the application that Mr. Ritz is referring to, I do think would probably qualify under our grandfathering. However, the next application is a little different. Jeff, I see your hand up.
I just had one. I apologize for not mentioning it earlier, but just for the record, we need to also figure out at some point where the construction access for this would be coming from to this one and the next one. I just want to make sure we get it right for any permit that's issued.
So have they not, there's no construction access proposed by the applicant at this point? I guess not. I don't remember it in the applications. Yes, Mark?
Yeah, we can provide that. We're still waiting on Heritage for review on this one anyway, so we're going to carry this over till the next meeting for that component, and we can provide some narrative on construction access for this so that we have this worked out for this one and also the next one you're going to hear.
Yeah. All right. So any other questions or comments from commissioners? Mark?
I would support Seth's suggestion that we get some other consultant's opinion about the feasibility of other options. I think it's a good idea. Healthy for us to look at it.
Thank you, Mark. So at this point, I'll open it up for public comment. It does not appear that we have public comment on YouTube. So if there are no other questions or comments from commissioners, Mark Ritz, would you like to continue until September 8th?
Yes, please.
Okay, this will continue until September 8th.
Thank you.
And that moves us on to Sunset House LLC at 15 Halwell Lane, also represented by Mark Ritz.
Once again, Mark Ritz from Site Design, representing the applicants at 15 Halwell. This two components to this project. The first component is similar repair and in-kind replacement of the decaying existing western groin. This is the westernmost groin in this particular installation of groin field. It's exactly the same as the project we just went over. Replace existing piles that are damaged, replace existing boards. This groin has been, these structures have been present on this site since the 1950s or 60s as well. They're both, significantly old structures on this site, which we feel meet the definition of grandfathering. That's the first component. The second component is a replacement of the existing timber bulkhead, which is starting to fail. And the proposed replacement method is driving steel sheeting directly in front of the bulkhead and capping it with a wooden cap. The proposed replacement is identical to the replacement that was approved next door on 13 Halwell just a couple of years ago, that was presented, I believe, by Mr. Gasparo for that property. We basically looked at the plan of what was approved for that project and have essentially replicated it on our site, with the steel sheeting being driven immediately in front of the existing bulkhead. This site, as the adjacent 6 and 11 site, mean high water is considerably far out. We have a wide beach. Both of these groins can be traversed by pedestrians. Currently, there isn't really any limitation to access across the site in the intertidal zone. So basically, that's the project before you. It's a little bit more robust because it does include the bulkhead replacement, but as I said, it is virtually identical to the bulkhead replacement that was done next door at 13.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners?
Can you hear me, Ashley?
Yes, we can hear you, Ian.
I apologize. I lost my internet connection, and so I did want to ask what the date was of the high tide lines on the drawings, and if they're up to date.
Mark, do you have an answer for that?
The survey, the on-the-ground survey on this site was done probably 2 to 3 months ago. And we have been out there to look at the site. We didn't do a detailed survey, but we took some photos and confirmed that the beach elevations, if not identical, were very similar to, where the beach came up on the groins, where we took, photos a few months ago at the time of survey. So this does reflect conditions within a reasonable margin of accuracy, but it was done a few months ago.
So would you be able to put a date on the high tide line, please? And also,
we can do that in the plan revision. I'm just not sure off the top of my head exactly what that date is, but we can put a date on that.
Great, thank you. And also, could you provide photographs of the one application that only has photographs looking directly down the groins as opposed to perpendicular to the groins as you do on the other application?
I will take a look at what we have for photos, and if I need to get some more, I'll go out there and snap a few more and provide them for you next go around. Because as with the last one, we're waiting on heritage on this one, as well.
Right. So thank you, Mark. Thank you, Ashley. Sorry that I'm reduced to falling in like this.
No, it's okay. I wasn't sure if it was your computer or mine having trouble, but it was yours.
It was.
Yeah, I know, Mark, when I looked over this application and saw kind of the bulkhead and how low it was, I know you've mentioned that 13 Halwell had a similar replacement. I do see this as a situation where there might be a softer solution, like quar rolls with some natural beach grass, again, because the beach is wide and it's not an extreme kind of bulkhead there. So I'm hoping that's something you might be willing to look into here.
We would certainly be willing to look into it, but again, the applicant feels strongly that they have a pre-existing grandfathered structure that they feel they have the right to repair, replace, maintain. And the reason we proposed driving the steel sheeting instead of doing an in-kind timber replacement of the bulkhead is because to do an in-kind timber replacement of the bulkhead would require considerably greater excavation of the beach dune and bank, and would result probably in more site disturbance, resource area disturbance than just driving the sheeting. But that is, the applicant strongly feels that they have the right to maintain and repair their existing structure.
Yes.
So, Ashley, will you give me permission to speak when appropriate, please?
Yep, you can go ahead, Ian, and then I'll go to Seth.
Yeah, okay. So Mark, wouldn't that have to revisit the Chapter 91 license since it is only an approval of a timber bulkhead? And obviously a steel would last significantly longer than I assume than a wooden one. Thank you, Ashley.
Yeah.
We would likely need to have a discussion with Waterways about that, but this is the kind of project that they have approved in many places, including, previously on Nantucket, where basically because essentially since the steel sheeting is driven directly in front of the timber, the change in footprint, the change in configuration is deemed less significant than would be the amount of disturbance required to replace it. So generally they've been supportive of this type of repair on other projects, but we would likely need to have a discussion with them in terms of the Chapter 91 issue.
So if I may follow up, Ashley?
Yes, go ahead, Ian.
Thank you. So my understanding is that Mass Waterways has had a revision of a recent sort of re-examination of their policies, and that there's now they've developed a fact sheet on the topic, and it's basically Storm Smart Properties Fact Sheet 7, Repair and Reconstruction of Seawalls and Revetments. And on page 9, with beach access, it says when erosion results in no fronting beach at mean high tide, then the reconstruction or repair of the structure will require a license from the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection Waterways program that specifies how the property owner will maintain required public access. And in light of this revision, even though this isn't directly, it doesn't directly relate to this particular application, I wonder whether they would also be reconsidering replacing wood for steel. And I apologize that I can't read any other relevant pages or paragraphs, but with my internet down, I can't access them. So thank you for your forbearance.
Yes, no worries, Ian. And this will have to continue. So if there's information you need to look up on the internet, you'll have 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Seth, I had seen your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'll try not to be too repetitive, but different applications, so I have to re-say my comments. I think that there are several reasonable, feasible alternatives on site here that would be more environmentally friendly than the proposed bulkhead and groin rebuild. I would like us to direct our reviewer to look at them. I also think that the requirements in our regulation to provide that alternatives analysis does pierce the veil of pre-existing use. And I think also specifically, if you think about the conditions on this site, Ashley spoke about this a bit, but it looks like you have about a 8-foot elevation change for the bank over maybe a 25 foot width. I have to get my ruler out on the actual plan, not my computer, but or maybe Mr. Ritz could let me know. But it's a relatively gentle bank there, especially compared to some of the ones we see on island. And I think that given that gentleness in slope and the significant amount of area of beach that exists in front of that bulkhead, in my opinion, there are several alternatives that would work on this site that would be environmentally more friendly than a bulkhead. I take the point about the applicant wanting to continue the use of the bulkhead. And I know we're dealing with still potentially waiting on legal considerations considering what is allowed in pre-existing use and what is not. But apart from knowing that opinion, I'm taking the point that we do still have to satisfy that requirement, and I'd like to see the applicant attempt to do so.
Thank you, Seth. Mark?
I have just had an item brought to my attention that I overlooked. This particular bulkhead, where it is located, it is outside of Chapter 91 jurisdiction currently, and was at the time it was constructed as well. So this does not currently require a Chapter 91 license. The groins do, and the groin is licensed, but the bulkhead does not require a Chapter 91 license because of where it is relative to mean high water.
Thank you, Mark, for bringing that to our attention. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Not, we'll open it up for public comment.
If I may, Madam Chair. The Rick and Deanne Atherton had some information. It's that same storm sheet that was referenced, that storm sheet 7. Storm chart fact sheet 7. They sent a copy in, and I'll make sure you guys get that, but their public comment kind of addresses that, but we'll have that for everybody.
Okay, thank you. That would be great, Jeff. So if there are no other questions or comments, Mark, would you like to continue for 2 weeks?
Yes, please.
Okay, so this will continue until September 8th.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that moves us on to Shenandoah Trust at 40 Easton Street, represented by Art Gasparo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm before the commission tonight with a notice of intent application, which proposes residential redevelopment down on Easton Street. And the plans before you are to lift and renovate a portion of the existing structure. Shown in red is the proposed footprint, and the cross hatching represents the existing footprint. We're completely within land subject to coastal storm flowage. We're also within the 100-foot buffer zone to coastal bank, which is the existing timber bulkhead, as well as the coastal beach, which lies just below the bulkhead. And then on the opposite side of Easton Street is also a vegetated wetland. There's no work proposed within 50 feet of the vegetated wetland from the other side of the road. There is some work proposed within the 100-foot buffer zone to that wetland. To the coastal bank and coastal beach, the structure exists within the 50-foot buffer zone, and there's also existing lawn and patio disturbance within the 25-foot buffer zone. The project would install a new foundation for the structure, which would be compliant with flood zones. The current foundation does not allow floodwaters in, so we believe that the project represents a significant net benefit on that basis in of itself. There are also other benefits that are included with this project. While there is work on the structure within the 50-foot buffer zone, there is a structural reduction area. You could see on the rectangle on the southeast corner of the structure within the 50-foot buffer zone would be removed. That equates to approximately 92 square feet. So I think that also represents a benefit in terms of the protected interests. And then there is an old red brick patio that you can see on the plan, which exists within the 25-foot buffer zone, and that would also be removed. The exact landscape plan for the site has not been developed. However, the owners have agreed to plant native species from the planting within on Nantucket with native species brochure, which we included in the application. So again, I think that they're trying to do the right thing here, use native species, increase improve the interests for the floodwaters and land subject to coastal storm flowage. while at the same time renovating the structure. There's no proposed grade changes with the project. There are some timber walls that exist, which would that are around the driveway that would be replaced to the same height that's there with stone walls, just because those timber walls are going to have to be removed in terms of the work happening on the site. And when they rebuild, they would prefer to rebuild them with a stone wall instead of a timber wall. And there's no work proposed below the mean high water line or below the bulkhead. So this is strictly a upland project, other than buffer zone project, other than land subject to coastal storm flowage. And I believe that the project meets that criteria and actually results in a great improvement. And I'd be happy to address questions or concerns that you might have with the application.
Thank you, Art. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Art, I'm concerned about the proposed subsurface propane tank, given that in our performance standards for land subject to coastal storm flowage, it says projects shall not, or sorry, number 3, all private underground fuel tanks should be outside the 100-year floodplain. So is there a way to make that proposed subsurface fuel tank be above grade to meet that performance standard?
I would say no, there's no alternative here in terms of there's not any portion of the property that's outside of the flood zone. And I think that the protected interest would be better served by actually having a subsurface tank, which is properly anchored. And that's typically what's been done for, many years throughout Brant Point. In other words, you'd have to have some sort of, above ground tank that would be, I believe, more likely subject to storm damage, and then could potentially have a greater impact to environmental protection interests than an anchored subsurface tank. And again, this is propane, so it's not, we're not talking about home heating oil that could contaminate groundwater or that sort of thing. So propane would essentially evaporate if there was a breach of the tank.
Thank you, Art. Seth?
Yeah, so I know with oil tanks, you're able to put them within side structures themselves. Are you able to put propane tanks inside structures? And if so, is that a possibility on site?
I'd have to double check, but I don't believe that's code. I've never seen that. I can get back to you on that. We're going to have to continue. We didn't get a file number, so I could certainly get more information on this.
Yeah, thank you.
But again, I think that we were looking at the two alternatives for, generating, for an HVAC perspective of either being what's available, since we don't have, a pipe natural gas system on Nantucket, in terms of either using home heating oil or propane. I believe that propane would be clearly the preferred alternative. And I think in that, even if you were to put an oil tank inside of the house, I think it would be in the better interest of the commission to have a propane tank exterior than it would be to have a home heating oil tank interior.
Thank you, Art. Jeff?
I just wanted to quickly go to continue our file number event of the evening. This does actually have a file number. It's SU 3567. It just came out a week ago, and I saw it in my list with finding the other ones.
Thank you, Jeff. I didn't realize that.
See, it's not just us with the file numbers tonight. They did something weird.
It's the universe has yard sailed them.
Yeah. Well, and then the DP didn't update their website with any of these, so that's where the problem is.
There you go. Any other questions or comments on this one? Looks like no. So we'll open it up for public comment. Also does not appear that we have public comment. So Art, now that you have a file number, what would you like to do?
I would hope to close. And, you know, I think the basis is pretty clear that a single subsurface propane tank, we have to heat the house in some manner or another. And I would say that, you know, this has been past practice, and in terms of meeting performance standards, overall benefit, that, you know, the proposal would be justified. If there was additional concern, I guess, from the commission, I would like to hear it. I'm not sure that I actually would come back with anything different, because I firmly believe that this is really the best alternative in terms of meeting the protected interests and being able to, you know, have folks heat their home.
Okay, thank you, Art. Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And no, Art, I don't have significant concerns. I hear your point. I do think that when we get to orders of conditions, we should update the waiver to reference not hitting that standard as well. So, but I do think there's a huge long-term net benefit here if we just edit what the waiver text says.
Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. So Art, I'm assuming you'd like to close.
Yes, please, Madam Chair.
Is there a motion to close? Motion made by Joe. Seth, do you want the second? Okay. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Harrisman, aye. Golding. Ian, you're muted. Go out of order. Plandowski.
Aye.
Is that better?
Now we can hear you. Yes. Are you yay or nay on this one?
I'm a yay.
Okay. So that carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Art. And that moves us on to Massachusetts Steamship Authority at 1 Steamboat Wharf. And it looks like we have Stephen Lecco on for this one.
Yes, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And also we have Dino Fiscaletti. He's a project engineer on this as well. Stephen Lecco with GZA representing the Steamship Authority for this project. Jeff, if you don't mind, I could share my screen. Would you? Because I have a couple slides.
Sure, go for it.
All right. So the Steamship Authority is proposing to dredge its facility.
Stephen, we're not seeing your slides.
I'm sorry about that. Let me try again. I apologize. Let me see here. How's that?
Now we're seeing them.
Thank you. Okay. So Steamship Authority is proposing to dredge its berthing area at 1 Steamboat Wharf. We do have a DEP file number on this, 0483564. And this, you know, everybody knows about the Steamship Authority facility. It's the lifeline, you know, to the islands, from the islands to the Cape, and also to New Bedford. We have the berthing area has shoaled in. It hasn't really substantially been dredged since 1986. In 2020, there was an emergency dredging authorization of a small amount of material, 84 cubic yards, but that's really all the dredging that's been done in almost 40 years. So it's gotten to the point where it really needs to be dredged in order to maintain the safety for navigation and berthing for the passenger and the ferry vessels that come to the island. So what you see in your application is a proposal to dredge to -15 mean low water, plus 1 foot of overdredge, which is standard in the dredging world. And that's 4,700 cubic yards of sediment, which is primarily sand. It's 85% sand. But since that submission, we've modified that. We're actually going to dredge a little bit less we're proposing to dredge minus 14 Nemo low water plus 1 foot of over dredge. And that dredge volume would be approximately 3,300 cubic yards. So everything you see in the application references minus 15 and 4,700 cubic yards, but what we're really going to do is minus 14 and 3,300 cubic yards. So as I mentioned, it's primarily sandy material. We went out and we sampled, took 5 samples, and these are the sediment, did sediment testing for all the material. The sediment is all suitable for upland disposal, whether it be a landfill, residential area, recreational area, or for reuse. It's also suitable for open water disposal at the Cape Cod Bay disposal site, but that's not really what we want to do with the material. That's sort of a fallback alternative. What we propose to do is mechanical dredging, and we propose to dewater the material on the wharf, and I'll show you a little bit more about that in a second. So here's the dredge plan that's in the application. This represents the entire berthing area. This gray area is the area proposed for dredging. That's the actual basin of the berthing area. And this orange area are the side slopes to the berthing area. So this total area that you see here is 38,000 square feet. And the existing depths in this area are roughly minus 14 to minus 15. So we propose to just basically match what the existing depths are. The authorized depth here is minus 14. What we would do is we would mechanically dredge material using a clamshell or a similar piece of equipment, bring that on shore into a secondary dewatering location, which we have details for. And then once that material is dried, we would truck it over, and our preferred alternative is to truck it to the Toscana yard over near the airport, Toscana Construction. We've been in contact with them, and they've expressed a desire for this material. It's good material for general construction use, and also as use for aggregate as well. So that's basically the project. It's maintenance dredging, and it hasn't been done in essentially 40 years. And we're proposing to do this and bring it to the upland site at the Toscana yard. That's our preferred alternative. And we've mapped out the route for that. It's in your application. I could show it to you if you're interested, but we have a route mapped out for that as well. We're not within a natural heritage endangered species area. We do have a small patch of eelgrass right about in this area, so we're not directly impacting that. We are proposing turbidity curtains around the entire dredge area during the dredging operation, so that area is not impacted, and any other adjacent areas are not impacted as well. I've got more slides, but I think that pretty much tells the story. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Stephen. Would you mind stopping the screen share just so I can see all the participants?
Certainly. Oh, shit. Okay.
There it goes. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners?
Yes, Ian.
Okay, go
if I
ahead.
may. Thanks. So it says that it's undergone chemical testing and does not exceed criteria for lined, unlined landfill disposal or for mass DEP reclamation soils. So Could you tell us a little more about that specifically, and whether that also would allow it to be used for, let's say, beach fill?
Yeah, I mean, there are no restrictions on what this material could be used for from a chemical standpoint. We haven't specifically looked at its use for beach nourishment. There are some more specific studies that would need to be done as far as what the receiving area beach material is like, and we'd have to make sure that it's compatible with that. But from a chemical standpoint, this material can be put anywhere in an upland environment and also at the Cape Cod Bay disposal site.
Well, thank you. I guess, my point is, what is its end use going to be, and whether or not we should condition it accordingly. I guess I'm talking through you to Ashley at this point, and excuse me for this cumbersome way of trying to ask these questions.
Yeah, Ian, I don't think we can condition its use beyond, that it's stored outside of a resource area, as far as storage. And then if it was going to be used for beach nourishment, whatever applicant came forward with that would have to compare, the sediment sizes and all of those things to that location. So I'm not sure that we
right.
can kind of
right. I'm just so the chemical testing is really it seems as though it's a different standard for landfill as opposed to beach nourishment, and the applicant is telling us that it's not it isn't tested to be up at the level of beach nourishment, whether it's compatible for beach nourishment. I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Well, from a chemical standpoint, it would be suitable for beach nourishment. All of the area except there's one area here that just in the southwest corner that has a very small amount of cubic yards that would not be suitable for beach nourishment. But everything else, from a chemical standpoint, could be put on a beach, assuming that its grain size was compatible with the existing grain size of the receiving beach.
Right.
We're not proposing beach nourishment as part of this project.
Right. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Seth, I'd seen your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's the same comment, and I take your point that we can't condition what the applicant does, but I would highly urge them to consider a higher level use such as beach nourishment for this material rather than general construction or making cement, because we're in desperate need of clean quality sediment. So maybe it's beyond our purview, but if the applicant could look at better ways to use the material, I would certainly appreciate it.
Well, I feel like, and I don't want us to get outside the scope of the application. I mean, it sounds like the Steamship Authority might be selling this to Toscana, is my assumption, and then it's whatever Toscana is going to do with it.
Yeah, I don't know what the arrangement is, if there is an arrangement at this point. But clearly Toscana has expressed an interest in the material because it suits their needs. But I can't speak to whether there's a payment from what the net economics are of this. And that's really not the purview of the whole
what you're doing. You're looking
Protection Act.
you're dredging and getting rid of the dredge, and that's Mark, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Ashley. I think we're way outside the scope of the application to discuss the end use of the sand.
I would agree with you on this one, Mark. All right, any other questions or comments from commissioners? No, so we'll open it up for public comment.
Wait, you can't.
So Deanne Atherton just put, perhaps this material could go into the Nantucket sandbank if there are no issues with the condition of the material. So that's kind of in the same discussion that you guys were just having. So.
It would be great if that could be considered. I agree. So Jeff, do we have everything that we would need to close this?
You do.
Okay. Stephen, would you like to close?
Yes, please.
Is there a motion to close? Motion made by Mark. Is there a second? Seconded by Joe. By roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding,
Aye.
Klandowski.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously.
And
Thank
Ashley, if I may, now would be the appropriate time for Jeff or you to call our Steamship Authority representative and put in a plug to have the sand used to the benefit of the town or some like use.
Yes.
We'll do that.
No, I agree. It would be good if we could all like work together for greater benefit. All right, so this moves us on in the meeting to minor modifications. We have Old North Wharf Cooperative at 29B and 29C Old North Wharf, represented by Art Gasparo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's kind of funny that this would follow that application. So this is the dredging project that you approved just about a year ago. And in the past year, we've been working to obtain the water quality certificate 401, which we have obtained, as well as the Chapter 91. While there was a Chapter 91 license for the dredging at this site previously, a Chapter 91 waterways permit is required to do the work. And the long and short is in the development over the past year, the scope of the project has been reduced. So the extent of what you have approved for work limit has not increased. It is there's no increase in or change in limit of work, but there is a decrease in the scope of work. And so the plan that's before you right now shows the reduced dredging, which is a reduction of cubic yards as described down to 1,400, so reduction of about 550 cubic yards, and the footprint was reduced from about 24,000 to 17,400, 6,600 square foot reduction. So really just want to ensure that as we finalize permitting with Mass DEP, which I'm cautiously optimistic we're close with, that the plan that they approve has also been approved by the commission. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions or concerns that you would have with the application.
Thank you, Art. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no. Jeff, do we have everything we would need to issue the minor mod?
You do.
Is there a motion to issue the minor mod? Motion made by Seth. Is there a second? Seconded by Mark. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding,
Aye.
Plandowski.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Art. And Ian, you're back. You're muted though.
And you're muted.
For how long, who knows? But sorry about all that.
We'll keep our fingers crossed for you.
Really.
All right, so this moves us on to certificates of compliance. We have Gallagher at 34 Washing Pond Road, SE 483439. And Art Gasparo is on to represent this.
I am, Madam Chair, and I probably would defer to Jeff, but would just briefly say to the commission that this was, again, I believe a pretty significant net benefit project. This was the old Good Willie house, as you may recall, and that was removed, and the new structure that was constructed was much further away from the bank than the existing structure, the pre-existing structure. And the work was done in substantial compliance with the issued order of conditions.
Thank you, Art.
We agree.
Okay, any questions or comments from commissioners? If not, would somebody like to make the motion to issue the cert?
So moved.
Motion made by Seth. Is there a second? Seconded by Ian. Looks like Mark has maybe stepped away, but Mark by roll vote. Beal.
Aye.
All right. Engelborg.
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding.
Aye.
Plandowski.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. That moves us on to Gallagher, 34 Washington Road, SE 483250.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Similarly, this aspect of the project was the replacement of the pre-existing set of beach stairs. They were pretty much remnants, but we put it back in where the other ones were. And there was maybe I should have mentioned it, a lot of it was associated with the previous order, but a very significant buffer zone planting of American beach grass. And a very narrow path, if you will, that leads to those beach stairs. It's really nice.
Remember, we had quite the discussion about whether there was going to be a path or a wooden walkway there. Ended up with the path, but it came out well, and we agree that it's in compliance.
Okay, thank you, Jeff and Art. If there aren't any questions, would somebody like to make a motion to issue the cert?
So moved.
Motion made by Seth, seconded by Joe. So by roll vote, Beal.
Aye.
Engelborg.
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding.
Aye.
Plandowski.
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Art. And that moves us on to D&B Realty Trust at 11A Meadow Lane. I don't know if Paul is going to take this one or Jeff.
I'm not muted.
I am here in case, but it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, this was just for the residential development of 11A Meadow Lane. I'll throw the plan up really quickly. For the work on the lot. We're recommending, we felt this was constructed in compliance and this could go forward. And I apologize really quickly. Let me stop my share. I need to get my notes back. We had this one with a recommendation for some ongoing conditions 19, 20, 21, and 22, which relate to the management of the pool.
Thank you, Jeff. So if there aren't any questions, would somebody like to make a motion to issue the cert with ongoing conditions 19, 20, 21, and 22?
So moved.
Motion made by Seth, seconded by Mark. So by roll vote, Beal.
Aye.
Engelborg.
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding.
Aye.
Plandowski.
Aye.
That carries unanimously. And that moves us on to orders of conditions. Jeff sent these out earlier today.
I do have some other ones that I can share as well from our file number debacle to help with the view of those.
Yeah, that would be great. I think anything we can get off the plate tonight would be fabulous.
Always is.
All right, so
I think the first one I have is 8 Sachem.
yeah, 8 Sachem Road, the Sachem Trust is our first one.
If it's easier, I'm happy to share my screen on all of these too, if that is easier than people trying to bring them up.
What would commissioners prefer? Jeff sharing his screen or looking at your own?
Sharing probably
share.
helps, don't you think?
Okay.
All right.
Then the
So-
public can see, so.
Let me just do a little moving here. So 8 Sachem, this was Brian Madden's that we heard last time and then heard again today, where they ended up relocating the driveway a touch and doing that. So we had our normal pool conditions, or normal fill conditions. We have our no fertilizer or other agricultural chemicals are allowed within the 50-foot buffer zone. All plantings are native and no cultivars, and then just some photo monitoring. Other than that, they did require a waiver because they are revegetating areas kind of in and around the 25-foot buffer zone. They're not doing any work in there, but they are putting stuff in. So we included the waiver to allow them to do that work and do that alteration for that restoration work.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm just curious, should we have an additional finding that, like, per this application, they will have, like, they can't exceed the 50%, they've met the 50%? Like, is there any way to memorialize that?
Well, so this has always been a rub, right? And not to hold this discussion way longer, is technically even coming in, like, let's just say in some crazy world, the site gets covered in phragmites, right? If they go in and they need to do that work in that buffer zone, they will technically be altering that area still. This is one of those, like, best intention kind of performance standards that I think we can fix when we redo the regulations and defining what it is. But right now, the way that we've always interpreted it is any alteration inside there counts against that percentage to make sure that it's either properly getting addressed or properly getting waived. But I'm not, it's always been a little gray, if that makes sense to folks.
Yes. Got it.
Yeah, so Ashley,
Yep, Ian.
so condition 25. I know I've been waddling recently with my knees, but I've never seen straw waddle before, so I'm not sure if you want to have that.
They're little ducks.
There we go. So
Sorry about
yeah.
that. I hit the wrong button. Yeah, sorry. That's supposed to be waddles with T's, not the straws walking.
Thank you, Ian. Any other amendments, additions? And if not, would somebody like to make a motion to issue as amended?
Sure.
All right, motion made by Ian. Is there a second? Seconded by Mark. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Klandowski.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. And then our next one is 88 Pacomo LLC at 88 Pacomo Road. Is it LLC or is it trust?
LLC.
Okay. Trust.
Second. So I'll bring this one up. So I didn't have a lot of conditions to the actual work, but much like the last order, we do have a requirement in our regulations where we have this second finding. So it just says, in accordance with section 39010B8 of the Nantucket Wetlands Regulations, the commission finds that no coastal engineering structure of any kind shall be permitted on an eroding bank in the future to protect the project allowed by this permit, except those coastal engineering structures allowed by waiver issued pursuant to section 393F of these regulations.
Thank you, Jeff. Does anybody have any amendments, questions?
Well, thank you, Jeff. I'm pleased that that is becoming part of order of conditions.
Yes.
Oh, it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So if there aren't any questions or amendments, would somebody like to make a motion to issue as drafted? Motion made by Seth. Is there a second? Seconded by Joe. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Klandowski.
Aye.
That carries unanimously. Jeff, do you want to go in order of what you sent out today, or do you want to go to 41 Holbert now?
I vote for 41 Holbert if I can.
Okay, so let's do 41 Holbert.
because it's primarily the one that I have open, so. Sorry about that. I really didn't have too much. This was Paul Santos's project on Holbert there. Kind of a regular raising. They weren't requiring any waivers for the deck in the back that was still outside of the buffer zone from the bulkhead. So I just had our normal fill provision, nothing else.
Thank you, Jeff. Does anybody have any questions, comments, amendments? Seth?
Yeah, is this the one where we were gonna require that the stairs did not have any type of like concrete landings?
Yeah, I think this is the one that you
I
mentioned.
think this is the one. No impervious landings.
So I'll put condition 20, the stairs. Oops, I could spell. Shall not have impervious landings. That's simple. The stairs shall not have, but the exterior stairs shall not have impervious landings.
Thank you, Jeff. Does that work, Seth? Any other questions, amendments? And if not, would somebody like to make a motion to issue as amended?
So moved.
All right, motion made by Seth, seconded by Joe. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Landowski.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. And then that moves us on to Shenandoah Trust at 40 Easton, I believe is the next one.
So this is the project that Art did. I didn't really have any conditions outside of the waivers related to the coastal bank. I know Seth suggested adding the waiver to, I'm not sharing my screen. We add on to the waiver to include the waiver of the provision for the underground fuel tank, as long as it's limited to propane. If you guys want to discuss that out, you can. Maybe we can put a condition 20 that the underground fuel tank is limited to propane.
Yeah, I think that would be good. Seth, do you have any thoughts?
I'm fine with the condition 20 being added, and I do think we should edit the waiver to reference the land subject to coastal storm flowage so that we don't run into issues in the future.
Thank you, Seth. Any other thoughts on that? I agree. I think having our waivers as accurate as possible definitely helps us out.
You know what's weird? And I promise I won't tell this back in story time. I actually remember where this started from and where it's gotten carried to is in the early 2000s, which should already tell you why we should probably update this practice. I specifically remember a great debate about underground fuel tanks in the flood zone. And at the time, the thought was that propane, because of the nature of propane, they weren't considering to be, they were considering fuel tanks to be like liquid fuel tanks. So like gasoline, diesel fuel, home heating oil tanks. And that with propane, even though when propane's put under pressure, turns to liquid, that if something happened to that tank, that it would turn to gas and go away and it wouldn't be a big deal. So they never considered them the same. And I think the project that came up on the most on was when they put an underground fuel tank at the Galley restaurant. Sorry, that's like a way history. And I think for whatever reason, propane tanks have just been considered like that ever since.
Yeah, that's fine, and thank you, but the language is not specific, so we probably should update that.
Yes. No, I think maybe calling that out in the regulations, we probably should define fuel tank. I know that sounds crazy to include fuel types, but different story. But I will add that in. I won't hold up the the share screen here while I type in a little novel for copying and pasting that regulation in. But
Well, and I know that theoretically, propane, you think turns into atmospheric gas, but depending on where it is, it can mix in there with groundwater. I don't know, watch the Gasland documentaries, and you do have to be careful.
Ask the folks on Woodward Avenue.
Yeah. Ian, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you. So I thought that was really interesting, Jeff. Thank you for that historical note. And also your spell checker is saying that you spelled dependent wrong towards the end of that last paragraph.
This is a huge beef of mine, and I will
It's
show
wrong
you.
in the regulations.
It's wrong in the regulations because I literally copy and paste those. So
Okay.
I don't spell it correctly because it's spelled wrong in the regulations.
Okay.
Trust me, when we adopt new regulations, I will remember to hit spell check to pick that up because it drives me nuts that I can never get rid of the red line for dependent because my predecessor didn't spell it correctly.
Duly noted.
Right. You can be like the students today and just add it to your own dictionary and you won't be the wiser when it comes up wrong.
I wish.
Right. Okay. If there aren't any other kind of amendments, do we want to see what that waiver reads like, Seth?
Yes, please.
Okay. I don't know.
This is gonna take a minute, so.
Okay.
I may suggest just for speed, Madam Chair, while so we're not here for forever, maybe jump down to other business for a second while I type this, and then we'll come right back. Because I just have to.
You got to type it out.
I gotta type it out.
Okay. So we'll kind of skip down to other business for a moment. We have approval of minutes from August 11th. Thank you, Terry, as always, for keeping great minutes for us. Did anybody see anything in the minutes that they need amended? And if not, would somebody like to make a motion to issue or to accept the minutes as drafted, excuse me.
Sure.
So I'm going to give the motion to Mark and the second to Joe. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Abstain.
Arisman, aye, Golding,
Aye.
Plendowski.
Aye.
All right, so that carries with Commissioner Engelborg abstaining. Jeff, I'm assuming we're going to skip the supplemental letter since we haven't heard from our own counsel at this point.
Yes, and they actually requested that to be continued, but they just did that today. So.
Okay. So the Pacomo Realty Trust letter will be continued until our next meeting, September 8th. Discussion of regulatory update. We still need to set a final date for that. Yes, Ian?
Yeah, so I know I mentioned that I was having knee surgery on the 23rd. And the bottom line is I've postponed it because the gel shots I've had I may not be a spring chicken, but I'm walking in a straight line and biking again. So whenever I need to heave my mass into whatever building we're doing it in, I'm happy to do so. So that's no longer a constraint.
Okay.
From my point of view.
Perfect. Well, I'm glad you're feeling a little bit better on those knees.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I don't know if commissioners have emailed Jeff dates they, I guess, were not available, so that we can nail down a date when everybody is available. So make sure to contact Jeff about that. Enforcement actions, potential enforcement actions, nothing.
I got none.
So reports, Crack.
So Crack had a really interesting presentation from Rachel Freeman talking about how they hope to extend basically the, what is it, the Union Street, no, it's not Union Street, but where we currently have, where they currently have the path going through the wetlands. Now I'm having a senior moment, but they want to extend it all the way to the Rotary from town, basically the bicycle path.
Okay.
And I really urge everybody to have a look at it because it was very instructive. It was certainly very instructive for me. So they've recently bought the property in front of the Island Home, which you remember we had a lot of discussion about. And so I think they have most of the properties now to allow them to connect all the way through and are hoping to get the rest shortly.
Well, that would be really amazing for public access to our harbor front.
Right, right.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that,
Can
Ian.
I- Can I
Jeff?
add on to that really quickly?
Yeah.
Not to spoil it. I haven't gotten the written request in yet, so I didn't include it to anybody. But I think the land bank would like to schedule a time to maybe have just a workshop meeting with you guys to talk about kind of these very things as they're looking at coastal projects and public access projects, and just have a little bit of a back and forth with the commission about what their board is trying to do and how they're trying to manage their properties, and to have a little back and forth about how the land bank is trying to do these, so they can get some feedback, so they don't waste time in hearings with project design if there's something that's there, but to at least go over a little bit more about some of the goals and some of the ways they're looking in the future. She'll write it up and send it in, but just wanted to put that on everyone's radar that may be coming in soon.
Thank you, Jeff. Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would that just be with Land Bank staff, or would that be with Land Bank Commission as well? Since they oversee some of the decision-making processes there.
I'm not sure the makeup from their group yet. I know I have heard everything from maybe like a joint meeting of the land bank and the commission, so we'd obviously have to post both of those. It may be something where we get the land bank staff and a commissioner just to kind of represent that board and take some feedback back. I think we'd have to put that structure together, but like I said, we're waiting for that request for them to come in. But since it just came up in the crack report, I thought the fact that we were talking about that was at least a little germane to that.
Thank you, Jeff. CPC?
The meeting, the meeting for September was postponed because there was only one item and we just approved it by unanimous consent, so there was no meeting.
Okay. NP and EDC?
Yes, we had about 45 minutes of public comment related to the decision to disband temporarily, it seems like, HCC advisory boards. It concerns NP and EDC because NP and EDC hires our transportation and planning staff. So if anyone's interested, they can follow up on that at the next meeting. But we didn't, it was just public comment. There wasn't any substantive discussion on that. We also appointed our new officers and our committee appointments. And then we had an update about the Lovers Lane reconstruction project and a couple of the transportation grants that are out there.
Thank you, Seth. Jeff, are you ready for us to pop back to orders?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to go back to orders and then leave commissioners' comments for the end. So we'll go back to Shenandoah Trust at 40 Easton.
All right, so I added on just to run through. So the first part is the the water dependent part, and then I added the waivers are required to the section 390.15B3. And then the private underground fuel tank shall be outside the 100-year floodplain. Commercial tank shall be outside the 100-year floodplain. Commission determines not practicable, the commercial tank shall be secure, so I can float loose. And then I put kind of continue with there just to kind of go back and forth a little bit. Based on current and historic conditions, the commission finds that the removal of patio and decrease in structural area within the buffer zone will result in a long-term net benefit to the protected interests. And then based on the need to provide utility access to the residential structures, the commission finds that a properly anchored underground propane tank will not have an adverse impact to land subject to coastal storm flowage, and that there are no reasonable alternatives that allow the project to go forward in compliance with the performance standards. And then the general language for the reference to the letters that reference those.
Thank you, Jeff. Seth, does that look good to you?
Yes.
Any thoughts from anybody else?
Yeah, I'm impressed on the fly. Thank you, Jeff.
I have a lot of practice writing those. Sometimes it's just I'll be on a lot of cut and paste for something. So
Give yourself a pat on the back, Jeff.
Nice to have my computer right here and be able to do that. So.
Right. Would somebody like to make a motion to issue the amended order?
Order as amended.
Order as amended, excuse me. Seth, I'll give you the motion. Mark will give you the second. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Plendowski.
Aye.
That carries unanimously. And that moves us on to Massachusetts Steamship Authority at 1 Steamboat Wharf. And we had this one in our drafts.
Yes. It's honestly a carbon copy of the one we gave the minor mod to tonight from the one from Old North Wharf. So I didn't really have a lot in there. And like I said, I'm happy to reach out to them to talk to them about finding some sort of beneficial reuse, but I tend to agree with Mark that I don't think we can require that through our orders.
Thank you, Jeff.
If I may, Ashley,
Yep, Ian.
doesn't condition 20 more or less say exactly that? All dredge material to be reused shall be tested for chemical and or biological contamination prior to reuse. So we are conditioning it. I mean, the way I read it, and I'm pleased we are, but if you feel that we can't do that, then.
Well, I don't think we can tell them specifically what that reuse can be.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Like
yeah.
I can't say to be reused specifically for making concrete.
Right.
Like, I don't think we have that ability, but I
Right.
think we can tell them, hey, test it before you reuse it because it may be gross. And I think in all spots of dredging, there's a chance, and I know they provide a lot of testing that they may dig up some stuff that they may not always expect given its locale.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's one of those moments I wish Dave LaFleur was here to be like, yeah, I remember when it was terrible last time. So but
I thought the same thing when we heard this application. Seth, I saw your hand up.
Yes, Madam Chair. The copy I have at the bottom, the footer has just the wrong file number and wrong applicant on it.
Yes, it does.
yeah, I told you I reused it. I do check those all before we send them back out again, but I'll fix it. Right.
So at this point, if there's no other changes, would somebody like to make a motion to issue as amended?
Sure.
Motion made by Ian. Is there a second? Seconded by Seth. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
Plendowski.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. We already skipped ahead, so we're moving on to commissioners' comments. Any commissioners' comments? Seth?
Two quick ones. First is I'm still waiting for a report regarding the Sacagawea Pond Benthic barrier order of conditions regarding the species ID. And
Okay.
hoping we had an update because it's been several months at this point.
Well, I know those, I believe they've all been removed, the benthic barriers. I'll double check with Thais in the morning. But if you'd still like something from Ken, I can try to pry it out of his hands outside of the photo and little narrative that he sent with.
Yeah, I would. And I think beyond them being removed, there's still a technical question of, okay, if the project had wrong species than what was applied for, I don't view that as, if they come in for a certificate of compliance ever, I don't think that would be in compliance. So I think it needs to be determined.
Fair enough.
Thank you for keeping that one in our minds, Seth.
And second one is exciting news that I have completed my MACC fundamentals training. The minimum required courses, at least. I'm still doing some more out of interest, but I urge other commissioners that have not looked into those resources yet to definitely do so, especially for our newer commissioners. There's a lot of good training there. They're all virtual right now, and they're also, MACC is going to be doing their fall conference in person. So you have opportunities to engage both ways.
Thank you, Seth, and congratulations on kind of accomplishing that. And thank you for all your hard work.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any other commissioners' comments? Looks like no at this point. So Jeff, I'll give it over to you for administrator staff reports.
Well, I mean, I really only had the one that Seth just stole from me. I was going to be kind enough to put up for him is they actually send us a letter.
Yeah, go for it.
And they send us a time. It's all right. You guys can just see it. I'm sharing my screen, but I'm turning it to see. Is they send a very nice letter that they send it to our office. They send it to town administration. We have actually forwarded it to both the current and the Inky in case they would like to put a little blurb about it in there. But I will say Seth is now, as far as I know, the third person on Nantucket to have completed this fully.
So is
and ironically, I'm the only person who has not seen this letter yet. So please forward it to me.
I definitely will. I'll try to send you a clean copy without the town administration stamp on there. But no, I do know, as someone who's completed that program, it takes some effort to do because the classes aren't always offered. I think they're pretty worthwhile. But kudos to Seth for getting it done. And other than that, I think that's it for me this evening.
Perfect.
And I believed you, Seth, even without the evidence of the letter.
But it's nice to have the letter to prove to the public, right, that evidence.
Like I said, Seth is the third person on Nantucket.
So is it you, Joanne, and Seth?
Yep. And I will say Seth is, I believe, the first commissioner to have finished. So
If I was to leave the school, my goal was to take a lot of those classes. And of course, I turned in my teaching contract. So there you have it. But Seth,
Next
great
time.
work. We're lucky to have you on the commission.
Thank
that's
you.
it for me.
All right. Joe, are you making a comment or a motion?
Yes, I am. Maybe Seth can help me get into that computer maze in order to get registered into it. I have been screwing around with it for a while. I'm just going to call the folks there and say, give me a hand to get in.
Jeff and Lisa have ample experience from helping out with me, so they can help you out.
Yeah,
Right.
Joe, if you just email Lisa the classes you want to take, and we'll get you signed up, and we will actually pay for your classes too. So let us know and we'll get you all stitched up.
Very
That's
good.
standing offer from anyone. If you ever see a class on there you want to do, let us know and we'll get you in.
Super.
Well, if there's no other comments from Jeff or commissioners, we just need a motion to adjourn.
Also move to adjourn.
All right, motion made by Mark. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Seth by roll vote. Beal,
Yes.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Yes.
Plandowski.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously and our meeting is adjourned.
Ice cream time.
Buddy, I still need to.
Bye,
have
everybody.
dinner.
Yeah, I still need to have dinner. I don't know about you. I'll see you guys later.
Bye,
Really.
everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Terry. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye all. Saw you were muting. I hadn't muted myself.